Welcome to the Grow Your Business and Grow Your Wealth podcast with Gary Heldt. Gary is an expert in helping business owners put together a plan that will provide a better future for their businesses, themselves, and their families. On the podcast, Gary interviews other professionals who share his vision, and together they share secrets and strategies any business owner can use to build a better financial foundation for your business and your life.
Welcome back to the podcast. Today our guest is George Gay, who is the CEO of First Affirmative Financial Network. George, welcome today.
Great. It's great to be with you, Gary.
So George, tell us, how you got into, the financial field. I mean, I know you're a West Point grad. What kind of made you to make that shift and come over to the finance side?
Well, actually, Gary, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do after I was in the Army, and I was on installation staff at Fort Carson for a while. And I read an article in Time magazine about the College for Financial Planning. And, I had started to invest some of my own money while I was still in the Army. It was interesting. And then I looked into this College for Financial Planning, and that looked interesting. And I signed up, started to take it actually while I was still in the Army. And then I just needed to figure out what I was going to do after my time at Fort Carson was done, and looked around Colorado Springs and found a fellow that had a business that I liked the structure that he had and he wanted to grow. So I came over and started to work with him. And then he discovered the concept of socially responsible investing, which he had gone to a conference and learned about it, came back and said that that was something that we were gonna do. So we started specializing in socially responsible investing, which is now more commonly called ESG, in 1988.
Kind of finding that niche. I mean, I understand that, this person said, hey, this is what we're going to do. But I mean, do you still find that as your passion now?
I think that the thing that always struck me was the idea that people should understand not just what their money does for them, but what impact it has on other people. Mm-hmm. And that the idea of integrating your values with what your money choices are has always made a lot of sense to me. People who say, well, money is an amoral instrument, that's not entirely true. I mean, right. Money, what you choose to do with your money has effects on other people, on society. And I just think that making informed choices makes a lot of sense. And to be responsible for what your decisions are is just something I believe in.
That's great. I mean, I think I do find it, interesting because, many people, will talk the talk, but then when you kind of look behind the scenes with things, they're not exactly walking the walk always. So that's pretty interesting.
Right. I had a speaker one time that said, people talk about their values, but if you really want to know what their values are, take a look at their day timer and their checkbook.
Right. That's the truth, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously you had a career before you got, into the finance side of things. And I always find it interesting when people have that second career, because that kind of tends to be almost their passion at that point. So, I asked earlier about, your passion. I mean, what is it that gets you up in the morning every day and want to do this?
Well, at First Affirmative, we work with about 65 advisors around the country. And over the years that I've been here, of course, I had a lot of really great friends that I worked with, that some of them have retired, some of them passed on. And so the opportunity for me to work with advisors and help them build their businesses and help them to help their clients is really the most important thing for me. I do have clients of my own. I don't want to understate their importance, but the most thing is to have built an organization, to build a business, and to have worked with a lot of really great people. The other thing that I've done for 30 years is I've hosted the industry conference for the social investment industry. And so, once a year I'm an event planner too. So, after last year we had to cancel our event. I'm happily working on an in-person event for October of this year, and that's a fun thing too.
Right. What about the finance industry and what you're doing now? What is it that you wish you knew when you first started out doing it?
It's kind of, right now, it's very interesting that ESG, environmental social governance, has all of a sudden caught on like crazy. And, when we started to do this 30 plus years ago, everybody thought it was like the dumbest idea they'd ever heard of. And all of a sudden, I turn around all the time and see all these people say, well, we've been doing ESG for 20 years. And I know that 5 years ago, they thought I was a, tree-hugging moron.
Right.
So the ability to work with people, all the tools, all the fabulous things that computers can do for you, you still have to, in this business, you still have to sit down face to face with a client, whether it's over Zoom or whether it's in your office or in their house. And what a client needs the most is a confident, comforting voice on the other side of the table that they believe is interested first and foremost in their well-being and their best interest. The decision to be a fee-only planner and be a fiduciary we made over 20 years ago. That was, when you say what I wish I would know, is just that most of the choices will be right. Some of them will be wrong. The ones that are wrong, you have to fix and move forward. Be in a place where you help people achieve their goals and dreams is very, very fulfilling situation.
Great. What are some of the questions that you wish that, clients would ask you, when you first meet them?
I think that the number one thing that I think people need to understand is the difference between someone who is acting in a fiduciary relationship and someone who isn't. And a lot of times people are very hesitant, to be very straight up, which is, how much do you get paid, or how do you get paid, and how much do you get paid, and does it matter what I do to how much you get paid? I think that's a conversation. The second thing is that, a lot of people that come to a financial advisor are doing it because it's a very foreign thing to them. Our educational system doesn't do a particularly good job of teaching people how to be adults with money and loans and credit cards and bills to pay. And the fact that, again, I had somebody one time that said, the thing that people don't understand is that, if they look at their family and they say, what's my future responsibility? It's not just the person I am today, but I also have to plan for the 70-year-old person that I will be at some point in the future. And if I don't set aside money for that future person, there'll be a lot of problems. And so I think that's another, everybody has to deal with what they have to deal with today, but it's how do you how do you think about what the future is? And so I think those are great questions for somebody to prepare before they're going to go out and look for an advisor.
Right. So obviously not preparing for that other person like you're talking about, is certainly a mistake that people make. What are some of the other things that you see that people are making mistakes before, obviously before they get to you?
Yeah, I think that the historically, when people would ask me what I do, like on an airplane or something, and I'd try and explain, and the great majority of people would say, I didn't know you could do that.
Right.
I didn't know that I could make some decisions about my investments that would match my values. And just over time, that becomes more and more possible. And the other thing, of course, is even in a husband and wife situation or partners, they don't talk about values, and then they start to have a conversation and they discover they're not on the same page. And so that's another thing, is that you have to be able to manage a conversation where all of a sudden you discover that one of the partners is somebody that needs security and confidence and safety, and another one's relationship with money is very different.
Mm-hmm.
And to help work with those people, and and frankly, you see some very, very sad situations in families with how they deal with money, whether it's how they deal between partners, how they deal with their children, just a range of things that you see in this business that you don't necessarily know in advance, that you're going to be involved in an ugly situation.
Yeah. I know we lots of times run across people where husband and wife are both working full time, got a couple kids, they're making $300,000-$400,000 a year, and they have nothing nothing put away.
Right.
And when you try to talk to them about it, one of them is like, "Oh, I've been saying that we need to be saving," and the other one's like, "Nah, we'll be fine," type thing. So I think that what you said earlier about our education system does not prepare us, I think is something that, I remember when I was in high school, we took a bookkeeping class, and that's what got me started in accounting. But, not, people weren't talking about it. They're certainly not talking to their children about it. And I think that, probably my grandparents' generation, nobody talked about finances.
Right.
Everything was very close to the vest and stuff like that. And that's, one of the reasons why I do this podcast, is to try to get people to start talking about these things, so we're not so heavily relied on somebody else when we get older to make sure that we're taken care of, from at least a financial situation.
Right. Well, and there's so many people that, credit, just as an example of they get into, it's very easy to get into trouble with credit. It's
Oh yeah.
very easy to get into, trouble with other things, that if the partners in a relationship aren't in agreement and don't work towards the same things, it's very hard. The other thing is, start to think about retirement when they're around 40 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I've had the good fortune to have a couple of families where, the parents told the child, the day she got her job, to talk to me. So when she was 21 years old, and, so she started maxing out her 401k, the day she started to work. And, the difference of somebody starting when they're 21 or 22 versus when they're 40 is enormous too. Because the other side of the coin is, people then are afraid that it's too late.
Right.
to save and invest, and you know, and every day that's, you know, I mean, when somebody, you know, what is it that when's the best day to start investing, you know, 20 years ago? The second best day to start investing is today.
Right. Right. I certainly agree with that. And I know that, you know, lots of times, you know, from my perspective, I always tell the parents, like, look, once they graduate and they're getting ready to start that first job, you know, out of college, you know, look, we need to talk to them then, because we need to make sure they got the right amount of taxes coming out of their check, so they don't end up paying a bunch of taxes later on. But just to start that discussion, and even if they're not eligible to be in a retirement plan, let's start with whatever it is, $50 a month at least, going into an IRA, or investing somewhere to
Right.
make sure that they have money, you know, money later on.
Right.
Because I agree with you. You know, the younger you can start, the better off you are. So in getting to that point, I mean, tell our listeners, why is it important to use somebody, you know, like you, a professional, and helping them? Because again, you see all of this stuff, you know, online this, online that, the different robo investors and stuff. Why is it important to pick a financial advisor like you as compared to just trying to use one of those?
You know, the first part of the question is that unless you're a computer programmer, you will never know how that robo is making a recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
It is, I mean, sometimes, you know, some of these robo products will just pick 6 or 7 exchange traded funds, and you know, and it may be a nice job of asset allocation. It might not. You know, somebody did a few years ago did a study of all the leading robo advisors and logged into each one of them, filled out the questionnaire with the same answers, and then compared the differences between what the outputs were. It's a surprising range. Now, the same thing will happen to, you know, I mean, same thing may happen with a half a dozen human advisors.
Mm-hmm.
We may say, you know, I mean, so if we say, you know, we believe that when in a certain risk category, you have a certain amount of equities and a certain amount of fixed income and a certain amount of cash, and in your equities, so much of it is in the United States and so much of it is outside the United States. You know, I mean, there will be human advisors that will say, well, we're going to make a bet that emerging markets will do better, and so therefore you should have more money in emerging markets. And you know, one of the things that I don't believe in is making bets with people's money.
Right.
And that the key thing, somebody looking at a robo advisor or human advisors, what is the process, and is it a suitable procedural prudent process? And then you can say, okay, this is something that makes sense. But you know, somebody who's not very familiar is going to have a very difficult time saying, is this something that makes. We've also seen a few times in market dislocations, some of these robo systems become inaccessible. Probably worse than the robos is what happens at like Robinhood or something. And all of a sudden, people are frightened, or they want to do something. I mean, one of the values of a human advisor is to help somebody avoid doing the worst possible thing at the worst possible time. One of my beliefs is that in good times, we believe our beliefs and we doubt our doubts. In bad times, we believe our doubts and we doubt our beliefs. And when you doubt your beliefs and believe your doubts, you're going to make bad choices. And so a human advisor is in a better position to try to keep you from making a bad choice on an emotional basis, whereas a robo advisor is just going to is going to do whatever you tell it to do. And if you just, last year, if on the 15th of March, you would have said, this is terrible, I'm going to sell everything, you would have missed one of the best 12 months in the history of investing.
Right.
So, and some people did. So I don't know, I hope that's responsive.
Yeah. I mean, I think that again, with investments and taxes and finance and everything else, I mean, I think there's so much emotion involved in it that I think lots of times, individuals need to have that human person to talk them off the cliff, and just make sure that, hey, we have everybody that, everything is kind of here. We put together a plan together. Let's not deviate from that plan, and so forth. I'm very much a strong believer of the team approach. It very much, obviously I pull that from sports, and the fact that, I look at it, I'm my client's quarterback, and I'll talk to the financial advisor, I'll talk to the attorney, I'll talk to, their insurance broker, whoever it is, we all talk and help them put together a plan. And then we need to keep the communication up. And I think that that's one thing with, if you're using a robo-advisor that you're not getting. And what happens if things change and stuff like that? Somebody, unexpectedly dies. Then what do the robo-advisor is not going to help you with that at all.
Right.
So I think that that's, a really a huge reason why it's important to have professionals, around people. Again, your second career, you've come across a lot of different people in your lifetime and in your career. What is something from either career, what is something that you have learned from somebody else that has really still stuck with you today?
Well, the first thing, to me is obvious thing is, I was a second lieutenant. And so I had my very first boss. I went to him about something, and he looked at me, he said, look, Lieutenant, he says, it's not my job to teach you how to do your job. It's my job to teach you how to do my job. And, so go figure it out. And so I've taken that away from that is I've always considered that it's always part of my job to teach other people how to be more than what they are.
Okay.
And, so people, when you want to focus on training somebody, you need to train them for what they're going to do next, as well as training them for what they're going to do now.
Okay.
So that was one, and like I said, that was 1975. So, the other thing, I tend to be an impatient person, and, to try to be more patient and try and be more thoughtful and try to be more present with people's. And, so that I can't, I took a course that, that helped with that of, being focused on the present, being focused on who you're with, and trying to be sure that when you're with one person, to be really focused on that and not be distracted by other things, not be impatient. That's another thing I think that's important. The other finally thing is you should never stop learning. And so whether it's the continuing education that you're required to do for a CFP program or just the opportunity to learn more things. I think that continuous learning is a sign of a professional.
I've always thought that it's like, I know like this much of what I could know, so I want to keep learning. And, from other people, from books, from classes, whatever it is, I'm with you there. I think that that's really important. So, talked about a lot of different stuff today. What thing have I not asked you
Ah,
we
well,
haven't talked about that you wish I had?
it's interesting because, you go into an interview, you never know for sure. Most of the time when I do an interview like this, they're going to be much more focused on what is going on with ESG and you didn't do that. And it's like, it's refreshing almost to talk about something else. But I will just say relative to ESG and SRI, and ESG is environmental social governance. SRI was socially responsible investing or sustainable responsible impact investing. And I would just want to get on the record the difference between ESG and SRI is that ESG will tell you which is the best run coal company. SRI will tell you whether you want to invest in coal companies or not. And so just my fast advertisement for my specific expertise in the industry is that little bit. Other than that, I appreciate your interest in how kind of my journey.
Right.
And because a lot of times people don't ask about that, or it's just like, well, how did you get from West Point to socially responsible investing? And it's you asked me a little bit about it, but in a very different way. So that was very enjoyable. Beyond that, I just think that just to go back again is, I think you should always work with somebody in a fiduciary situation, and that you understand what that means, and frankly, that the advisor understands what that means.
Right.
Not all of them do.
So, George, if people, because there's not, again, I mean, to me, you can throw a rock, you can hit a financial advisor, wherever. Same thing with CPAs, but not a lot of people have the niche that you have. And so if someone that's listening to this that wants to talk to you because they believe in that, and that's where they really want to have their passion and have their money, how can they reach out to you? How can they get to you and talk to you?
The interesting thing now, I mean, let me just first, our website is www.firstaffirmative.com. What's happened nowadays with email addresses is you get so many emails, you set up your spam filters. And so now if I was to say, well, my email address is, georgegay@firstaffirmative.com, which is what it is. The likelihood, though, is that one of your listeners sends me an email, my spam folder is going to say, I don't know who this is.
Right.
And off it goes. So I would say, we do have service at firstaffirmative.com. If somebody wants to schedule a call, because then service at firstaffirmative.com goes into our service team section, and then they take the action. So if somebody says, I'd really like to talk to George, then it will come to me, then I'll get back to somebody. So that's an odd response, I know. But I guess, I mean, my phone number is 719-478-7054. So, I mean, if you call and leave a message, I'll certainly call you back.
Great. George, I really appreciate your time today and your insight. Look forward to learning more about what you do and spreading the word.
Super. Thank you very much, Gary. Appreciate the opportunity.
So today our guest was George Gay, who is the CEO of First Affirmative Financial Network.